And then maybe they can go, oh, you know what, I actually think about those things too, and if I approach it that way, or maybe if I approached it this way, maybe I would, maybe make it better for myself.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Inside a Songwriter's Mind. My name is Dustin Jones. This is Mission Control Studios. Welcome. The very first episode here, like I did say, so we did have a little technical difficulty halfway through. I didn't format the card completely, or at all, I guess, and you only get audio for the second half. So if you still want to watch, keep watching and just listen to the audio. Jay Case, good friend of mine for the past 30 years. We sat down and talked about a lot of things, songwriting, life in general. That's one of the things that I wanted to do with this show. That's why I wanted to do it, is I get a lot of artists that stop by, and we have a lot of conversations that I find very interesting, and I think that songwriters and artists in general, their minds just work a little differently. So I wanted to capture some of that, and hopefully you guys find it interesting. Let me know if you do. And Jay Case, he just put out a record called Foundation. He's also in Shannon Moen Trio, and he's in Frank Duresti and the Lake Effect. I think that's it. He's probably in multiple other bands that I can't think of off the top of my head. But enjoy the chat, and that's it. Thanks, Jay, for coming in and stopping by here for Inside a Songwriter's Mind. No problem. Thanks. This is the very first episode of Inside a Songwriter's Mind.
I feel honored, brother.
Thanks, man. Well, you were asking me some questions about what this podcast is kind of about, anyways. Yeah. So I didn't want to start
telling me until you were filming. That's fair.
So I noticed that being in the studio a lot of artists come in, and we have some deep conversations and some funny ones and some things, and I just noticed a pattern or a trend of thinking, and I think that nobody really. We take it for granted, I think, or not even for granted. I think it's just...
You don't think about it. It's more just natural.
Exactly. I think we've even talked about that before.
Yeah.
Briefly. I was probably all deep into it, and you probably were like, yeah, all right, okay.
No, I'm usually really interested, but sometimes I can hide my interest.
I know, dude. Well said.
Yeah.
So this is really for... I wanted to document that and kind of... and give people a kind of a peek behind the curtain,
sure,
kind of thing, and just
maybe people who are thinking about songwriting or already do, but are like, I'm not a songwriter. I just write these songs, but I'm not a songwriter. Exactly. And then maybe they can go, oh, you know what? I actually think about those things too, and why approach it that way, or maybe if I approached it this way, maybe I would, maybe make it better for myself.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I love it. Good.
Some tips and tricks too, and things like that. Obviously,
best practices.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just to see what kind of patterns that artists kind of have. So like that, even just to start things off, like when did you? Do you recall like the first song you wrote? Do you recall it?
I kind of do. So the very first song I wrote, I never played probably in front of anyone, but would have been when I was 17 and I had just gotten my first guitar, and I learned how to play an E chord, an open E, and then I was playing that. And obviously, when you first start playing an instrument, it's tough to switch from chords or from different notes. So I was with that, but if I just held that shape, I could move that shape up and down. So I went the classic E chord, and then up to like the fifth position. So it was like an A chord open, and then up to the seventh where it's a B chord open. And I wrote something around that. Now back in those days, I did not sing. I wasn't a singer, or at least I didn't consider myself that.
Which most people find that extremely hard to believe when they find that out.
Oh, I didn't start singing until I was...
Not to bark up your tree, but like, everybody loves your voice, and
well, that's very kind.
So it's hard very hard for people to believe.
Yeah, no.
Were you 20 or 21 or something?
No, I was probably 25, 26.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, when I first started like singing, lead singing. Like I started singing backups when I was probably 19 or so, or 20, and.
Was that with your uncle's band?
No, I never actually had a band with any of my uncles. I played in bands, like sort of just guested with my Uncle Mike, yeah, my Uncle Terry out west, and my Uncle Pat out west, who are fantastic, all absolutely fantastic musicians in their own right, and my biggest musical influences. People ask me my musical influences, and I say, oh, Jimi Hendrix is my first sort of, but I always forget the actual most important ones, which were my family, my mom and my grandfather and my grandmother and all my uncles.
It goes that far, that deep, eh?
Oh yeah, my grandfather was a fantastic fiddler. Like he played East Coast fiddle tunes. like Don Messer and guys like that, and also old country tunes like Wolf Carter and Hank Snow. And so I was constantly surrounded by music. He would listen to music while he was a carpenter, Finnish carpenter. He built houses too, but later on in life, he was a finishing carpenter. And he would just listen to country music while he was, planing things or routing the edges of cabinetry. So it's always there. It was always there. So I'm surrounded by music. So I get this E chord and I'm like, this doesn't sound like anything I've heard, Wilf Carter do. So I wrote some words about it, and I have no idea what the words were, but it was probably a love song.
Yeah.
I was 17 at the time. So
17.
Yeah. So that was when I first started playing.
Okay.
So, and I mean, obviously it's tough to learn songs when you first start an instrument. I mean, especially for me, especially guitar, to like listen to, and I was listening to Jimi Hendrix, try to learn a Hendrix tune.
Right off the bat.
Yeah, when you
dove in.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was just the music that spoke to
Yeah.
me before I even started playing, and so yeah, so I couldn't learn a Jimi Hendrix song, so I decided that maybe I will just do this and then write a love song. So I wrote a love song, and I have no idea what it was called or.
Wasn't about a specific woman that you
It
can't
was
talk.
probably
Right.
probably was.
At the
I was a
time?
high school
school.
boy, so it was guaranteed about a girl who I was probably friends with, but didn't know how to tell her that I was rather shy in high school. Yeah, so I don't know. I can't say for sure, and if I did, I probably wouldn't.
Right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So when you write songs now, obviously, that feeling that you get right before you write them, or even when it happens,
Yep.
do you remember that being like that first time, or did you kind of stumble upon that?
Yeah, I don't. That's a really great question, because I can't speak to my initial sort of songwriting method.
Right.
I can't speak to that at the beginning, but I know I've developed over the years just something that works. It's not always exactly the same, but just something that works for me. It's usually a chord progression and then a melody sort of humming in my head, and then gibberish turn into a turn of phrase or a lyric, and then I can write the rest of the song around
Is
that.
it always like that?
Yeah, so it's not always like that. Sometimes it starts with the turn of phrase, and then I'm like, how would that musically? What is that? What kind of feeling does that evoke? Is it a minor sort of sad melancholy, or
Well, that goes to that too, of that feeling of that melancholy feeling or whatever. When you were feeling that first song,
Yeah.
were you even, like, you can obviously be honest about it. Did you feel anything, or were you just like, I'm putting this together naturally, but because there's got to be something there.
No, there was definitely a feeling. It was
Okay.
And I'm going to say probably my first 5 songs were those sappy love songs. Sure. And actually 80% of the rest of the songs I've ever written are sappy love songs, really.
They're good go-tos.
And the other 20% are just sad songs about, like, life kicking you in the butt.
Yeah.
Or you kicking yourself in the butt and blaming it on life, typically.
Once again, well said.
Yeah. But yeah, so I can say for sure that, like, it was about the feeling, and you're trying to convey that feeling through. It wasn't just like, oh, what would be cool? What would sell on the radio?
So you did have that feeling right away then.
I guess so. I did. Like, I've never thought about it. This is
That's what I mean.
funny. Yeah. I've never even thought about the first, 5 songs.
Because you
I wrote.
feel it now. Like,
Definitely.
like, I can tell when I'm going to write some songs, I can tell now because of the pattern. I can tell days before. Like, when they come, they usually come in like in
You mentioned something to me before that you try every day to get up in the morning and
did that for a while.
Okay.
Don't do that anymore.
Okay.
I was trying to do that for like, every
For a
day
while,
for like
man.
a month. I wanted to, and I did do that.
Yeah.
And I do find that's definitely a way too.
Yeah.
I think the way you're describing, that's why I'm trying to get to that root of that feeling that because you do get a vibe, a feeling. It kind of all comes out, like, when they say, "Oh, I grabbed that song out of the sky."
Out of the ether. For me, it's if I can give myself, or if I afford myself that solitude, because for me it takes solitude to create music or prose that leads to music.
Do you find you do it at night, or do you find you
Much
do
more
in
often
the
at
morning?
night? Yeah, much more often at night. I'm going to say most songs I've ever written have been started around 11 p.m.
Yeah.
and later, and typically in the dark or as dark as I can get it.
Usually, are you like you drink? Do you drink while you like? Do you usually catch a little buzz when you're writing?
Sometimes I find it's a little bit easier. This is horrible to say because I don't agree with it necessarily.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I find removing the inhibitions
Yep.
and your sort of own self-doubt tends to lead a little bit better at times into the creative process. Now, you'll find the next morning,
Right.
If you've written something and maybe you've had more than just enough just to warm the cockles, maybe you've got a glass of wine in you or a nice little dram of whiskey and you start creating, that I find is the sweet spot for me. But I've also written stone sober, some really good songs,
Right.
that I'm really proud of. But the typical thing, yeah, just a little bit of a drink just to remove those inhibitions.
You can compare that to somebody going dancing. Some people would like to have a couple drinks before they go dancing.
Just to the social lubricant, right? So for me, if you have too many or whatever, you think you've written, the next Beethoven sonata, and you wake up in the morning and it's absolute junk. You've made a voice note of it or something. And
It's when I was drinking.
Yeah.
When I did write
Yeah.
while I was drinking, I would definitely wake up and I couldn't write drinking. There was no. I did write a lot like the next day.
oh, okay.
Or after a bender of some sort.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
A lot of like down, like self-abuse.
Got you.
kind of,
On the Sunday regrets.
the sorry Sundays.
I have. There you go. So I'm sure it's a thing.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah.
But I would tour a lot, and then on the way home on the Sunday, typically if you're out for a week or whatever, you're coming back home on the Sunday or maybe the Monday, typically the Sunday, and you've lit it up on the Saturday night because it's a packed bar and you're having fun, and there's just this deep. It's a depression, but it's only fleeting. It's a moment in time. It's not a.
You have to ride it out. Yes,
And I didn't know that was a thing, man. And then I brought the van's always super quiet, and you're just like, but driving home, and like one day Frank Rusty and I started talking about it, and it was like, oh, you feel that too, man?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah. It's obviously the effects of the substances
Exactly.
that you've.
Well, anytime anything that brings you up to have a good time,
is
when you're
bring
gonna
there's got to be that fallout, man.
yeah, like life in general.
So that's interesting. I find that interesting that's when you found yourself to be the most productively creative, because you can be creative when you're shittered. Pardon, I don't know if.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
No, you can swear on this. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you're tanked, you can be creative, but maybe it's not productive, like we were saying.
Yeah.
Like you look back in retrospect, and it's actually.
I think personally, I think you have to get to a place, like a place.
Yeah.
And that can be however anybody wants to, or has to get there.
Yeah.
Some people want to get there with a few drinks.
Sure.
Some,
Maybe it's meditation. Like I was saying, for me, it's best in complete solitude,
Yeah.
with the lights down, maybe a candle, and I don't burn incense, but like a scented candle.
I've seen you burn incense. That's not true. You
don't
came into
burn-
the studio and you
No,
burned
that
some.
was a scented candle,
Oh, so,
brother.
okay, different.
Remember leather and whatever. It wasn't lace.
Oh no, you're right. Yes, saddle leather.
Something,
yeah.
man. Yeah, leather and cigars or
Yeah,
whatever.
you're right. Yeah.
Anyway, but no,
Leather and lace would be the opposite of that.
that'd be weird. Yeah,
a little odd.
I'm into some kink, but not
Yeah.
not while I'm recording, Dustin.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so I find that it's a meditative state, and I think that's where I'm most creative, and it's maybe you get into that with the aid of a like a lubricant like alcohol or marijuana or something like that, but it's truly just to get to that meditative state.
Yeah.
And if you overshoot it, you're not in that meditative state. Now you're just getting high or drunk.
Once again, it goes back to that feeling. So there is a feeling and that's where I guess part of that like is to try and find a way to describe that, like that is that magical thing that kind of happens.
Yeah.
So it really is hard to describe. All I can really think of is that, like, for songwriting in general, just getting the tools in order. And
Absolutely.
having your tools in order, and then when the magic time is there, you're ready to have something to. Because I do believe, just because this is inside a songwriter's mind, I really do think this goes over to artists and everything.
100%. Yeah, no. And I think it's about finding like that. If you get really cerebral or ethereal about it, you can say, and I've heard a lot of people say, like, I don't feel like I'm writing it. I feel like I'm a conduit. And I've had that a couple of times. A couple of my favorite songs that I've written happened in a matter of like literally 15 minutes.
Right.
95% of the song was written. Maybe I had to clean up some phrasing here and there or fix a melody later on or a chord. But like January Cold off of my new record, it's probably my favorite song on the album. I shouldn't say that, but because I love every song differently, like children.
Yes.
But it's, I'm just so happy with it. It just came out like one night completely by myself, sitting in the music store at like 11 o'clock. I had a glass of whiskey and I was just in the moment, and it was January.
That feels, you could feel the heaviness.
And there was just something there. But I felt it earlier in the day. I came up with it. I was walking to a barber shop, Big Guns Barbershop with Paula D'Agostino, and she was cleaning up the mess that was my face because it was January and I was in a low spot and I was feeling creative, but I couldn't do anything about it. I think I was just too low, or maybe I was over medicating or whatever it was. But I was walking down the street and it was just bitter, and I said to myself, this bitterness is fleeting. Don't worry about it. It's going to be over soon. And then so I was like, oh, that's kind of like a nice turn of phrase. That could be a nice happy song or an uplifting song. Turns out the rest of the song wasn't uplifting at all, but it could be. I still see it that way. But yeah, so I just sat down and in 15 minutes it was out. Yeah. The song was out.
So beautiful.
Yeah. And I was, and that in that regard, you don't feel like you're writing a song. You feel like you're a conduit to make a song happen. Not that song was written by an angel somewhere and I came down. I'm not of that sort of mind, but
you don't have that power.
I certainly don't have that power.
I thought you.
No, but I don't prescribe to that.
Think
that belief. Gotcha. But there's something out there in the great beyond that just is creating art, and if you can just sort of channel it, and again, that's why you need to be into that meditative, what I'm calling a meditative state of just being open. And to allow that to happen,
right?
To get yourself out of the way of the creative process.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, I totally. It's almost like looking at those pictures where you have to focus on. Then
you have to let your eyes unfocus in order to focus.
I do find it interesting that it's that one line did trigger that whole feeling of that song though. Mm-hmm. But you somehow, it's interesting that what came out of you musically partnered up perfectly with what you were feeling. Like that's what I mean. That's that magic where like, what is that?
Yeah, I'm not just writing a song that is meaningless. Sure. I'm writing a song about I've written songs that I enjoy that have nothing to do with me or anyone that I know. It was just a nice turn of phrase that I enjoyed, and I sort of built a song around it. I've done that too, but it's really nice and it feels more authentic maybe. I don't know. I don't know what other people's songs are about necessarily, and I think that's the beauty of it. You don't really know which ones, if they're well written, which ones are from your heart and a story about you.
Right.
The best songwriters make it so that it could be a song that's about you, about the listener.
Right.
And you're like, how does he know or she know that this is...
Well, those are those common thread themes. Like you said, love is the common song to write about because everybody can relate.
Sure. But it's the specifics about that if you can tie it in with someone's day to day,
right?
And they think that it's a unique issue, but maybe they see, oh, well, somebody else was kind of living it as well. There's that sense of belonging, that sense of connection between people that goes so far. And I think
where is that coming?
And who knows, man? But again, maybe that's
Are you? This is also on these talks. Well, I do want to just give out different issues or topics for things that maybe you're interested in, just your views on them.
Okay. Giving my opinion on things.
Well, just that's always fun.
Okay, it's good. Hopefully, people want to listen.
Well, just like that, it just made me think of some things. Like, do you believe in that? The vibe of it, that people have a certain like that there's energy between
120%.
You believe that? Okay.
I don't know. I haven't really researched enough of it, and I'm not even sure if we'll ever know as a being, what that exactly is. But yeah, there has to be something there, vibrations, like people talking about, the frequencies of vibrations, and how the earth has sort of a grand frequency, and then a lot of rhythms that really speak to humans, and that most of the most popular songs are built on, right? And
They
rhythms,
have like, yeah,
there's a commonality, whether it's a fraction of that particular frequency. So, and so I know that I actually see the earth as one organism, and we're just basically cells of that organism. So we are, like, if you look at your thumb, it's actually made up of billions of cells.
Yes.
But you see it as a thumb. So if someone looks from afar, they see the earth, but there's individual cells in there, and we're the individual. So the strife between us is just is like our thumb having a cancer or something like that. It's a very silly way to put it, but I think I'm saying it kind of correctly. That strife and the war and all that stuff, or just that interpersonal angst and anguish. So when we get closer to harmony and living as one another, and I can feel what you're feeling and you can feel what I'm feeling, and that connection, you're being more like the full organism, right?
Right. That why? Yeah. Why? I always think of that too. Why is that good feeling? Where's that? Why is that good? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's got to be. It's an interesting thing to think about. Why when you do good things, you do suddenly feel good.
That's a good one, and I have a not a very well fleshed out theory on that as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, doing good makes you feel good. Therefore, it's a selfish act. Not selfish, but you're doing it for you.
It's because, well, if you even the idea of thinking positively too, and like manifesting these things,
sure,
or all of those things are all chemically, they make you, you start to believe these things.
Yeah.
So it's really, I think it comes down a lot to that too.
Thought is a very powerful technique to, if you can change the way that you think, if you can rewire your synapses and your neurons, to either think positively or at least take things a little less seriously,
right?
Then I think it leads to probably a more at peace existence.
You see more at yeah. That's what I. To me, I see that as being more at peace.
Yeah, it's not happy. It's not necessarily that you're happy all the time, because things are going to happen. You're going to do things
right.
that are going to disappoint you, and someone else is going to do things that are going to disappoint you. But as long as you don't, it's not this, it's maybe a this
right
existence, because there are going to be ups and downs. It's how much peace that you can find to get you back to that stasis, or
right.
And that's for me. Some people thrive on low lows and high highs. Typically, they burn out pretty quickly. But
yes.
Some of the best music.
There is some genius in the madness. Like,
some of the best music I listened to was made by people who were doing that, right? And
it's fully passionate at that point. I think where the being in that, and those you're talking about mostly younger people too. Even like at those times when they were at their biggest, there's a lot going on.
Yeah,
like as we get older, as we get older, it like we're no young pups anymore.
Speak for yourself. I just turned 40.
Yeah, that's right. I guess I am a little older. Yeah. 43. I am old man Jones
at this point.
Yeah. But I do think that we took a lot of we get a lot of knowledge, which is good. A lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
Take the wisdom, but I do miss the angstful youth, or however you pronounce
that. Yeah. The youthful angst that we used to have. Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose. I don't know that I miss it. I think I'm, my teenage years were very awkward.
Yeah, you said that.
Yeah.
I remember you in high school.
I was decent at sports, so I could sort of find a niche there.
Right.
But I didn't know how to interact. I had, acne and bad teeth and stuff like that. And it was just like, I was just awkward.
Right.
And I think we all are.
Sure.
And we all feel that way because it's a point of a lot of change. But for me, I was especially awkward. And I lived way out in the country where I didn't hang out with everybody after school. It was go to do the sport thing, and then my mom would come and pick me up, and then I'd be out in the bush by myself. And so I'd run out into the woods with my dog. And
were you always a nature guy?
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely.
Yeah.
I was born and raised out on Case Road. I lived away from there for just a couple of years. with my mom, but mostly out there. So, and I had friends who lived. I had a friend next door, and a friend a couple of doors down that I'm still good friends with to this day.
Yep.
You don't lose that, right? But yeah, whenever I would get home, I was either with them or I was by myself with my dog and just out, because my grandfather was an outdoorsman. He used to hunt to feed the family and fish to feed the family. So he taught those things to me. Now I don't hunt, and I catch and release fish because I don't need to eat the meat. And that could go a long way, because I think it's more humane to do that than whatever we do into the grocery store if you look at it. But
yes,
but I can't bring myself to do it. But right now, but if it came down to it, I'm sure that I would.
Right.
But yeah, so I was always an outdoors person. I feel most at home in nature. I feel most at home in the trees. Like if I am feeling stressed out, I'll go and just sit under a tree and just breathe, and that sets me right, man.
And the music on your record foundation, it does have that whole the only, like you and Shannon, I found both have like a really nature feel. Like,
cool. I can hear it in Shannon's.
That is, yeah.
Shannon Moan, yeah. I can hear it, and she's playing again some more shows. One at Lop on December 22nd. I'm not sure when you're airing this, but
yeah.
But I love that quality to her music, and I can hear it.
You have that.
So if I have that as well, that's great, because it just reflects.
I've heard so many compliments about your record, mostly of that J Keys record, or the way it feels, and
awesome.
And to hear that,
that's great. Yeah, it speaks to people on a deeper level. That's fantastic. That's all you can ever ask for, really, as an artist, is like, can you convey any sort of message to someone that gets through to them and not just their ears? Oh, that's a catchy Rihanna song,
right?
But it doesn't speak to you. It's just catchy,
right.
And I don't mean anything against Rihanna.
No,
I'm just
absolutely. Pop music is great for entertainment.
Sure.
And there's some great pop songs.
There's so many amazing pop songs, like so many amazing pop songs that I'll never tire of. But there's also a lot of fluff there, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's literally right on the surface. It's formulaic, and it's just, this is what's popular right now, and this is what's selling albums.
There is a fine line too that I've found with people coming into the studio as well, and I do find that it's mostly with younger artists, and I struggle with the same thing. I think you almost have to form into the artist you're going to be, but it's that experimenting, almost becoming too experimental. We're not wanting to sound like somebody else.
Sure.
So, say your favorite band is the Dixie Chicks or whatever. Yeah. And so that's influenced them, but they don't want to sound anything like that.
Right.
Like where it's like, well, but try this instead, or like, well, there's a reason the Dixie Chicks are the Dixie Chicks. These songs are put together and that's the thing too. Are you writing songs for yourself, or are you writing them for the public? That's always
public
the big line.
Right?
Like that's always a big question.
Yeah.
And for yourself, do you find yourself writing for?
No, I certainly write songs beginning with me, because I won't put them out if I've written so many songs that nobody will ever hear, because they just don't speak to me. They're like, oh, I had this catchy line or this catchy melody that was really neat, but it doesn't speak to me. So
right.
I'm not I can't put it out because I can't stand behind it. But
that's interesting to know.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. Like, it's catchy, but
personally, I think that's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe, but if I gave it, often I'll give them to someone else. I've got a few songwriting partners, and I'll just be like, here, try something with this, or let me play this for you. What do you think?
Right.
And typically they'll be able to bring it somewhere, and it's like, oh, okay, well that's actually.
Well, that's why talking to you is one of I do want to talk to really good songwriters, like I appreciate and that. All kinds of songwriters, but right. You've obviously written a lot. Do you have like a plan, like when you're going to write, do you sit down thinking of it, like other than like when you, or do like, the way you said late at night is when it happens, but does it just kind of come to you, or do you make an effort to like, oh, tonight I'm going to write? No,
I definitely it used to be very spontaneous, because I used to have a lot of downtime, alone time, and I wasn't distracted with YouTube and Netflix and all that. But in the last 10 years or whatever, there's not a lot of downtime, alone time. So you actually have to like set that aside,
Schedule it.
set it aside. And I actually, so there's an artist, an R&B artist. He was super humongous in the 90s, but he's still, I believe, a big time music producer. His name's Babyface. And he used to say, and I was into music, but I wasn't a musician at the time. I was probably 15, 16. And they were doing an interview with this guy. This is in the 90s at some point. And he said, oh no, it's work. I sit down, I set aside like whatever it was, 3 hours a day to write music, and it's work. I punch in, I punch out. I'm a workhorse at it. It's not this pulling things out of the ether, like a fairy. You pull out of a tree and
Right.
just like there it is.
But that's
Here's
Babyface.
a song. But I thought that at the time, as a music lover but not a musician or songwriter, I thought, well, that sounds terrible. I'm like, that just almost removes a certain quality to the music. But I totally understand what he means.
For sure. Oh, for sure.
When you get to a certain level.
Well, I've written jingles and stuff. Have you done that?
Oh yeah, 100%, man.
Yeah. And
I've written songs for people's weddings.
Me too, yeah. The songs for people's weddings, I tried to add a whole lot of feeling.
Exactly, of course,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. But for the jingles, if it's a workman.
But it's a workman use. It's like you're commissioned to do something, so you sit down and you do it, and it's work.
That's really neat, that idea, actually, because of the writing for a wedding, because I do stuff like that as well for when people come up with a topic or something they need.
For
like
commissioning
I
you, man.
Yeah, but I find that interesting in the fact that not only do you have to have that skill, so the jingle one, I have to write about, a clothing store. I did one for Dillard's clothing store, but you don't have to have a whole lot of feeling for that. But for someone to hire you for one that you need a feeling for, that's a real knack.
Definitely, man. Yeah, I mean,
like, did
they
you
hired you for a reason.
Did you place yourself like in the shoes of those people, or do you bring back love that you would have had, or do you?
I think you have to relate to it in a way to make it, not say believable, but to make it relatable, like to make it authentic sounding. You have to be able to relate, or else you're not going to write it. I find I'd like to think that I can tell when someone isn't telling a story that they can relate to. It just sounds contrived. So I always have to put myself in it. I gather as much information as I can about the subject that they want. And I just try to put myself in that space and then write the song. Yeah. And I mean, sometimes it turns out to be completely different from what they thought it was going to be, but they're still happy with it.
Right. Because they feel that. Because they feel that.
Yeah.
Like they feel the love.
There's an authenticity there.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's just neat though, but it is neat for...
It's a great exercise, man.
Yes.
It's a beautiful exercise as a songwriter to really do that. And,
for sure. And know that it's not really for you anymore. This is for them.
Yep.
Like to know that is kind of neat.
Totally.
Like
yeah.
You put a bunch of feeling in it from some different point.
Yeah. And I was just the other day, I was watching this Hot Docs festival that was in the Sioux, and there was a documentary on Gordon Lightfoot, who is a Canadian treasure, obviously, and how he was not commissioned by anyone, but he was, he felt compelled to write a song about the Edmund Fitzgerald, which was a disaster that's very unknown through the world, but very well known to Great Lakes communities, right? Like Minnesota, Michigan.
The song is really famous though, is it not?
It's really famous,
okay,
but it's more famous in the Great Lakes region,
of course,
right? Like it's one of his bigger songs worldwide.
We obviously know it, but it is one of his bigger songs.
Yeah,
though.
people don't realize it's a real.
Oh, really? They just love the song.
Just love the song. It's catchy little riffs and all that stuff. But so he had to sit down, and I think it's a finely crafted song, and the lyrics are poetic and really heartfelt, because he went and he still meets with the families of the people who died and all that stuff. So he had there's a connection there. So he put himself into it when he wrote it. So it was really neat. And he also wrote another one about building the CN railway from coast to coast. So he put it in a couple of verses. He puts himself in the position of the immigrant workers, these people who came, couldn't speak English, do anything, and they were doing the most dangerous jobs, right? They were carrying the nitrous into the, something like, I don't even want to try to cite a statistic, but a lot of people came and died just trying to blow up the mountains to get through it. And so he put himself in there when he wrote.
What's the name of that song?
It was commissioned for the centennial.
Oh, okay. So it's not one of his songs?
It is one of his songs.
Okay.
He wrote it, and it's a trilogy. It's the CN. I don't even remember, but it's 3 movements, but it's a folk song in 3 movements, different tempos, and it goes through. And yeah, it's just amazing. And I think he wrote it for the centennial in '67. But it's
I'm going to Google Gordon Lightfoot.
Check it out, man. It's a really, really cool song. Yeah,
that's
really
awesome.
cool. But again, it's putting yourself in a situation, and feeling it enough that you can relate, and then writing about it.
Right.
That's how I do it that way anyway. Elton John did that for Marilyn Monroe, and then changed it for his good friend, Princess Diana. Beautiful songs, right? Like it's a beautiful song, and it's because he could put himself in that and that situation. And I don't think he ever knew Marilyn Monroe.
I don't even know.
No.
If he ever met
Candle in the Wind.
He
might have met her when he was young.
I think he said he never met her or something.
Oh yeah, it's in the song. It's in the song.
Like to know, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway.
Yes, okay.
Sorry, Elton. Sir Elton.
Sir Elton. Sir Elton would be it.
If you somehow stumbled upon this.
Exactly. Do you if you had to like how much do you really put emphasis on like if you could like out of 3 things, if you were to say rhythm or melody or lyrics, what would you say is the most important?
Yeah, that's so good. And I think everybody's different. For me, it's different on different songs, but I think I'm most captured like just immediately by the melody.
Right.
I start with melody. That's what catches me right away. If a song doesn't melodically get me, it doesn't matter what the rhythm is. It doesn't matter what the lyrics are. There's some fantastic wordsmiths who just the way that they write melodies doesn't capture me. So I'd be better to just read it as poetry.
Do you have it? Fair enough. Do you have a favorite like melody artist that you would say?
No, I don't think so. It changes daily.
It does.
It really changes daily. Like there's so many. Ian Thornley from Big Wreck. They're a metal band, really, is what they are, but like with huge blues influences. But I find him to be he just writes such beautiful melody over these humongous guitars.
Yeah.
And this like really heavy backbeat that normally doesn't capture me.
He's got a strong voice.
And he just wails. And I saw an interview with him from like the early 2000s when they started. And he just says, I just love to scream. This new record is, I just found different ways to scream a pretty melody. Amazing. And so that he's consistent. Like no matter if I love the song or if I start to the song and I'm like, oh, it's a little bit heavier than my tastes, but my tastes are wide ranging, but I would say him, like, but at any given time, it could be someone different. Ray LaMontagne writes such beautiful, beautiful melodies as well. Very subtle and soft.
I hadn't heard of him until you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. That's great.
No, he's fantastic. He's got this, this song, this record called Ouroboros, which is, it's basically a concept album, and then just takes you through. And he co-produced it with I think Jim James from My Morning Jacket produced it, and
cool.
That band played, but the melodies are so beautiful, and that's what captures me. Sometimes I don't even understand, and that's why world music gets me a lot, because rhythmically it's so beautiful and complex. I don't understand what they're saying,
right?
But the melody gets you,
right?
You know what I mean? So like I understand Spanish, so when I listen to, Latin music, I can understand it, but it's not about the lyrics really. Lyrically, it's all about the melody.
Yeah.
So I would say melody, and then rhythm, and then lyrics. But lyrics are hugely important.
Right. Yeah.
But
I don't want to take away from any of the parts.
Of course, but my initial, like if a song has that trifecta, it's a good song.
Of course.
Yeah.
Actually, that's another question. I know it's hard to answer, but what would you say categorizes a good song?
Oh, that's
a tough. I know it's a tough one.
That's impossible, man. Yeah,
I know.
Because and I mean, for me,
I just mean personally.
Yeah, for me, I think it's that. It's if it's got a strong melody, whether it be melancholic or maybe it's just happy and uplifting, and then if it's got maybe second would be the lyrics. If the lyrics aren't vapid and just super repetitive.
Right.
If it says something, my favorite songs lyrically are songs that aren't literal. They're poetic, if that means anything.
Absolutely.
They say something that's ambiguous and can mean one or two or three different things, because then it'll speak to you, and then you think the song is personal to you, but the songwriter might not have had that in mind. You think of something completely different. Like I have a few people on the album, and this makes me happy. This makes me proud. Sometimes my lyrics sound just so personal. Like there's songs that I couldn't sing when I first wrote them. I couldn't get through them.
Right.
Because I would start having emotional
Right.
connection to it, and then I couldn't get out of it, and I'd just end up crying, which is horribly silly. I know.
Are we allowed to know what song those are? Or you do not want to say?
No, you'll feel them for yourself.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. I'm just specifically saying there's a couple
Yeah.
songs on the album that are pretty personal that way. But one of those songs, somebody was like, "Is it about this? Because this is what I feel," and I'm like, that's what it's about.
Right. I just heard Paul McCartney actually say that the other day
Oh, yeah?
on an interview. Yeah, because he has a bunch of meanings too. But he wants to hear what the other
I'd rather
people
know-
think, and he loves that they mean different things to people.
Yeah, that's why I tend to shy away from, at least at first, maybe in 10 years, if people are still listening to that album, I'll be glad to say, okay, so this is what I was thinking when I was writing it, but it's never literally about it. But like I tend to shy away from saying this is what the song is about, because then you're almost taking something away from the listener.
I agree.
You know what I mean? You're guiding their hand through and saying, no, don't look that way. This is what I mean.
Yes.
No, don't think that. I mean this.
Yeah, there's that approach, and then there's I obviously write a little differently than that, but but mine is more wittily done.
So how do you?
I do. I pretty much get to the point, but I and I'll try and make it as witty as possible, pretty much.
Okay.
Like it's where
I see what you mean. You're more literal with it.
Very,
It's not,
very
not,
literal.
not ambiguous, but you try to turn a phrase.
I got him, or turn a phrase. I guess that's
Yeah.
a good way to say it. Like, what a witty way to say that, or what a cool. And my song's just filled with a bunch of those, but in the whole, they all.
Yeah.
But there are guys like yourself, like there's more writers like yourself.
But there's a storytelling. So here's what I see in your songwriting is a storytelling that's more allegory than a literal. You're not like, especially when you're singing about like what we did last weekend and we went out and partied hard, or we went to this place and this was what we did. I hear it as an allegory, and it's like I can go, oh, I lived a night like that, or I lived an afternoon like that.
Exactly.
And so to me, it's more, you might be literally saying something, but it's allegorical rather than just saying, I did this at this time with these people, and we did this, and these were the consequences.
Right. Yeah.
And I said it in a funny way. There is an allegory there. There's still room to interpret on your songs.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And I do hear people do that, and I get that. And I do see why you'd want to keep yours out of like your whole story out of it.
Yeah. No, again, so I mean, there's some things that aren't ambiguous, but
which is great that you even have a problem to really worry about that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You could be Britney Spears and worried about did she do it again?
Yeah.
Oops. You could be really did she really spill that out?
I did it again. Oh.
Yeah.
What did you do again?
Poor Brit. I take it back, Brit.
Yeah, we're really slamming all the hot shots here.
Yeah, I see that. I just really wanted to get into that. A couple other questions here, and then I'll get some views on some certain things. Do you find that this is just, I wanted to see when the artists come by, their political views to it, you don't have to get deep. You don't have to get deeply into them. Do you find that you're a political person? Yeah,
very much so. Yeah.
Okay, so you're very. Do you find that do you find that does go into your songwriting at all? Do you think it influences? Do you think politics is influencing your songwriting at all?
I think on occasion, but I don't love doing that, just because then it can be, and it's just for me because there's some amazing political songs.
For sure.
Ones that jump out at me like Ohio by Neil Young, right?
Yeah.
Like that's very politically motivated. It was out. It was written, recorded, and released within like 4 or 5 days of that Kent State. It's crazy that they did that.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And so that's really political, but it works so well. So for me, I think my personality and my personality traits influence my songwriting and my politics.
Right. I would
I
think
think
your
rather than
politics. Sorry, go ahead.
I think rather than my politics influencing my songwriting, it's a common ancestor that they have, which would be my social bent, my what I was given by my family in my upbringing. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like
Yes,
my
totally.
my soul is this. So these are my political views, and this is how I write songs, rather than this is my political views. So write songs about it. I mean, I have
It's obviously going to affect
Exactly.
your personal
yeah
self.
yeah,
So
but I haven't written songs literally about a political event. Like I kind of did. There was a song that I wrote for a band I was in years ago, and I love the song so much. It's got the heaviest, coolest rock and roll riff in it, and I scream through it. And it's a song called "I Pray," and it's not necessarily about religion as a whole, but it was about basically it was written in the early 2000s when George W. Bush became president, and a lot I could see the evangelical Christian sort of right wing, who, in my opinion, maybe missed the point a little bit on the Christian aspect, and they're just more evangelical right wingers.
right.
And it was like how they use, certain parts of their evangelism to oppress others. And so I wrote a song, and I love the song, but it's I've never released
little
it.
too heavy.
Yeah,
Little too heavy.
it's not heavy
No,
like
I
the
mean
music,
too
but
heavy.
it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I never.
Well, you know what? When you write political songs or something like that too, you don't want it, like personally in myself, you don't want to become that guy either.
Yeah.
Like music is a safe place away from this.
Sure. Again,
that's
though, there's
personally just me
for me.
speaking
That's
as
for me
well.
too. But there's some like Tom Morello writes some amazing. The guitar player from Rage Against the Machine and Audio Slave, absolute genius on the guitar. But he's also a fantastic songwriter. He's very very political. Like
Right.
he
That's,
writes protest
I find that
songs,
to be passion.
and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It works great for him. And then when they're in Rage Against the Machine, I guess they're actually a really political band as well. So he's just but all of his upbringing is, or not upbringing, but all of his music that he makes is very political.
Right.
Which can tend to diminish your audience. If I don't believe in it, I don't care.
Right.
If there's some guy in a KKK outfit and he's like, I'm not listening to this hippie bullcrap, I'm like, good, I don't care. I don't want you to.
Right.
Yeah, don't listen to my music and enjoy it.
Exactly.
Because if you don't have empathy,
You're not going to even understand this.
you
isn't
won't
for you
understand
anyways.
it. It's not for you, man. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, I think politics and songwriting are influenced by the same thing, which is my heart. So I don't think they influence one another
Right.
necessarily.
So it just kind of roundabout does. I get that.
I think so. Yeah, indirectly maybe.
Yeah. What about, do you find, you don't have to answer these either, but religious wise, or do you find, like you did say you're a religious guy?
Nope.
Oh, you didn't say that? Sorry.
I didn't. No,
Oh, you
that's
had-
okay.
Yeah, sorry. I thought I heard
My
that earlier.
family, I grew up in a pretty relatively religious household. My mom and my grandmother attended church. Actually, the Bailey family are all pastors and preachers and stuff like
No
that.
way.
So that's my grandma's side. My grandfather wasn't particularly religious, but he was spiritual, and he encouraged.
What do you find the difference in that is?
I think just openness and just being appreciative of someone else's. Again, like my grandfather wasn't religious, but he would never disparage my grandma and my mom from going to church and
Right.
from praying and stuff like that. He says that is what offers you solace. Do
Right.
it, as long
But he
as
was a spiritual guy, believed in
spiritual
God.
guy believed in something.
Something.
Yeah, and
You
I
never
think-
talked to him much about that?
Oh,
or?
we talked a ton about it, but
Oh,
he was
okay.
he was very, again, which influences me to this day, not literal about it. He was very,
Kind of
what
find
do
your
you
own
think?
way?
Find your
Yeah.
way, man. Like, don't let anybody tell you what you're feeling is right is not right.
Right.
If you feel that it's right and you've got reasons for it,
Right.
then go that way. And as long as you're not hurting somebody else,
Right.
So I think that's where I'm at as well. I think people who my family members and most of the people that I know who are devout Christians are fantastic, amazing people.
Right.
Right. Most of the atheists I know are fantastic, amazing people. Most of the I guess I would consider myself more agnostic than anything. Most of the agnostics I find are fantastic, amazing people.
Right.
So
Just good people in general.
there's good people, man. Whatever you subscribe to or you describe yourself as doesn't really have a. Just because you're carrying, a scripture, doesn't make you not an asshole.
100%.
People who are atheists and say like, to heck with you and your religion, like you're dumb and all that stuff. Those people are assholes, right? They tend to be assholes.
Yes.
So yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm religious, but I'm agnostic maybe.
Do you find that it goes over into your music at all, like your
Spirituality
beliefs?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because there's I write a lot about the past and the future and I think love is a very spiritual thing. It's a very sort of ethereal thing. It's not something you can put your finger on. It's not something you can draw a picture of.
Right.
It's so that's in itself. If you're writing a love song, you're already spiritual.
Right.
Is how I.
Well,
feel
that is that thing I was talking about.
Yeah.
That magic thing.
Yeah.
That it's unexplainable.
It's unexplainable, and the best artists.
That's what gives me faith. Is that unexplainable stuff?
There you go.
Like that magic is just like it's too much.
Yeah, it's too much for us to understand. I don't want to. And again, maybe Christianity or maybe Judaism or maybe Islam or maybe Buddhism are correct, and who am I to say that they are incorrect? I just don't know. All the power to you. I would just never say I've got it figured out.
Right.
I got it all figured out. This is exactly it. I know what everybody should be doing and what you should be thinking.
That's the scariest part of organized religion, of the ones that are so adamant that no one else is right.
Sure, yeah. Some I can't subscribe to that myself. I'm more. Some people find that humble to say I'm a servant of what this scripture is, but I find the most humility in saying I don't want to say, as long as I live my life in an acceptable way, and I don't hurt anybody. Every religion's got that thing of the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Yes.
And we just kind of live that.
If you just lived like that, everybody would be great.
One rule.
Yeah.
That's all you really need. But
yeah.
But it certainly does come through in my music because, yeah, like I said, love is basically if you think about love, if you feel love, you're already spiritual. You just might not know how to say it.
And those are the vibes that you do attract. That comes back to that attraction thing of those vibes.
Yeah.
When you throw that off, it really does come back to you.
I agree.
I've noticed that.
I agree.
I personally have noticed that just by acting and thinking a certain way brings way more goodness to you than when you're acting that way. Mm-hmm. And when you are in a train wreck kind of mode, you tend to attract train wreck kind of mode.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's why, I mean, I've got a few influences that I tried to pattern myself after. Of like, I really like how this person. Some are peers. A lot of them are just my upbringing, but some are peers, and I'm just like, this seems like a good way to live because I enjoy being around these people,
right? And
this is how they seem to be. Like, I don't know what's going on in here,
sure,
but this is the vibe I'm catching, so I want to project that vibe as well because I like that.
Well, the amount of gratitude too that comes with that.
Yeah, gratitude. I think gratitude shows humility, which is an important thing.
Yeah. I know I'm a big believer in the gratitude thing at this point.
Oh my gosh, we have we won the luck lottery of like we were born in a beautiful town in a beautiful area in a country where we can say the things that we mean, and we have clean drinking water.
It's crazy to think that like the two of us can sit here and talk just like this,
like
recording studio and
and
people don't
winter,
have drinking
man.
water. Yeah.
People don't have the same dang country.
Don't get so heavy, okay?
In the same country, in the same province,
I know.
People have poisoned drinking water, and we're just sitting here doing this.
I know.
And that kind of breaks my heart. Yeah, let's not bum out too much about it, but be active about that and talk about it,
sure.
And tell people that that's not acceptable. We have brothers and sisters who can't eat and drink safely in our own province.
Do you notice exactly in seeing some stuff about that? Do you find that age has given you to a more not not courage, but more strength in saying things like that. Like
Probably. I
as
mean,
a
there's
young person,
but there's a brashness when you're young, right?
Sure,
There's a
I
devil
guess.
may care attitude when you're young that you might be just like, I don't care. I'm just going to say what's on my mind without really thinking it through. It's people
True.
it's people who, if they're saying something, in my personal experience, I respect someone who doesn't say something just about everything and just constantly commenting on everything and everything and everything. And if they say something about something, it means that they thought about it, they care deeply about it, and it's
Right.
important.
Right.
So, and I've got a few people like that.
When dealing with someone who's confrontational like that about thoughts like that, I like to try and even if you just ask a lot of questions to them, they end up talking themselves into a hole most of the time because they don't really.
Yeah, if you can't, if you haven't fleshed out your thoughts.
Yeah, and I mean nicely talking, like, "Oh, really? Did you?"
But that's the way.
Yeah,
That's what conversation should be.
Should be like
people are more and more, and I can't speak to before I was born or before I was an adult, but more and more it seems to me that people aren't talking to understand. They're asking questions to get an answer, so that when they're asked a question, they're just going to answer and be right, as opposed to understanding.
They're leading.
Yeah,
They're
as opposed to
leading you into their
understanding
answer.
your perspective, and maybe through these questions, you're going to understand your perspective a little bit better too.
Right.
So, but if we did that instead of just separating one another and trying to one up you.
Right.
You're going to answer my question. I'm not listening to your response. I'm thinking of my next statement.
Yeah, those are the worst conversations.
So,
which we have a lot of those in the bar gigs and things like that.
Oh yeah, sure, and certainly online, whether it be anonymous or not. And I think that gets us into trouble as a family. You know.
I'll ask you the classic line of how do you feel about the digital music in the missing the old style of music, or
I mean, of course, I think we tend to have a certain affinity for what we grew up with and the old and the things that we're familiar with. But I think there's a lot of beautiful things that are happening digitally, like so digital production of music, like you have in the studio here. It opens the door. It opens the door for so many more people to create music and get art out there.
True.
And I think people's ears, if you take money out of the equation, if you take Sony Music and BMI and all these people with a ton of money that just push artists and shove them down your throat if you listen to the radio, which I don't do anymore for that reason.
Right.
And you just go on to just music as a thing that's out there. The amount of music that's out there, people will, it's almost like the free market of art will decide that this is good art, this is not as good, or it's as good for different people.
So much to sift through is the
There's
problem.
so much there, right? And every time I listen to like if I'm streaming music, or if I'm on a site where you can buy music, and you just go down the rabbit hole and you hear this new band that you've never heard of, and I do this all the time. I listen to them. I'm like, what? Why don't I know who these people are?
Exactly.
This is amazing music, and they're way better than me, and they're unknown, and they're right over there. Like, so what the heck? What am I even doing here? If there's so much good music that I don't even know about, how's anybody going to hear about me?
Yeah, well, they're hearing. There's probably people finding you just like that.
I hope so. Yeah. I hope I'm making others discouraged as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I feel discouraged, but it's only momentary. I can't possibly stop doing this. Like, it's not possible.
Right.
I have to do this.
Do you feel like that all the time? Like that you like is music with you all the time?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, in you all, like, do you know what
All
I mean?
the time. I listen to music all the time. If I'm not listening to music, my partner and I were just talking about this today when we went out camping out to in the middle of the bush. I've got a camp way up in the middle of the bush north of Thessalon, and it's pitch black. And there's a highway about 2 kilometers away that is deserted after like 8 p.m.
Yeah.
So there's no sound except for like the animals moving around. And she and I slept in a tent without the fly on because it was a clear night and there was just beautiful starry sky, not a cloud in the sky. And I literally, dude, I was hearing music. I was just laying there, and when that silence came, I could hear horns, strings. I wrote a song in my head And again, stone sober, but in that meditative state. She had nodded off to sleep, kind of, and I was just sitting there, and I just heard music constant. If the world goes away, I hear music.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I can, and I never capture what I hear in my head.
Right.
But you just keep trying, and maybe one day I'll get there, but I hope not, because if I do, I might just say, okay, done.
Done. On to the next thing.
Good. Yeah. Now I'm going to start painting.
Amazing. Well, thanks, Jay. Thanks for stopping in here and talking with us. I appreciate it. Thanks for the very first episode of Inside a Songwriter's Mind.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Thanks, man.
Look forward to many more.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Thanks, Jay.